It must be hard being born in the wrong time. Just look at Peter Crouch, who belonged in the Jurassic era, or Glenn Johnson, who belonged in the bin. Point being, sometimes people who you think are in the right place at the right time could have excelled in a different period of history, and today we're going beyond the cop and looking at 10 Liverpool players who would have been amazing in a different era. Now, this isn't me saying that the lads on this list were bad at the time they played it. In fact, some of them you could argue were at the right place at the right time and were anything but poor. No, this is instead a list of players who would have been perfect for another manager in Liverpool's Premier League history due to their talents being exactly what was needed then and there. Number 10, Yossi Benayoun, Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp is the man who could turn chicken into chicken salad. So get ready to hear his name come up on this list a bunch, because there's so many players who have walked through Liverpool's doors during the Premier League era who would have thrived under the leadership of Mr. Boom Shakalaka. Step right up, Yossi Benayoun, a man who was an underrated gem in the Rafa Benitez era of Liverpool, putting his tireless work rate and attacking versatility to great use in a side which needed extra threat beyond the likes of Torres, Gerrard and Dirk Kuyt. He operated almost as a second striker at points, so just imagine having someone with his talent in Jurgen Klopp's 2015-16 Liverpool side when they were going through their transition period into the Gegenpress. He was always in the right position to win those rebounds and second balls in an attempt to create goals. I mean, just look at his hat-trick against Besiktas in 2007 as a prime example of his positioning awareness, and his first goal for the Reds against Reading as a perfect display of his dribbling and technical ability when running at an opposition's defence. He was also a weirdly clinical finisher, scoring goals from every angle possible, so him in Jurgen Klopp's central midfield position as a rotation option for Jordan Henderson and Emre Can would have been superb. Number 9, Martin Skrtel, Graham Souness. Look, nothing that I can suggest is going to fix the absolute bin fire that was Graham Souness in his Premier League tenure at Liverpool. Honestly, better men have tried, but I can look at this entry as damage limitation, so to speak, as well as putting someone who was a bit of a throwback to the defenders of old and putting him in the correct time period, like Back to the Future, but the defender in question has a slightly bigger forehead than Doc Brown. Step forward, Martin Skrtel, who, if we're being honest, he was never the best defender in the world. The man was more well known for being a brick house who was capable of scoring a goal at either end of the pitch, the little overachiever, and he was clearly out of his depth once the modern game became more about ball possession than, you know, entertaining attacking football, with his main skill being heading the ball so hard it would change the shape of the ball, never backing down from a physical challenge, and as mentioned before, being an aerial threat in box-to-box situations. So just imagine him operating in Graham Souness's early Premier League team back when the main responsibility of defenders was winning all their battles in the air, and for that little bit of extra aggressive spice, put him alongside Neil Razor Ruddock, the Grant Mitchell to Skrtel's Phil Mitchell. Seriously, that back line would have scared people so much they would have pissed their pants or Gary Lineker all over the pitch. A throwback defender who should have stayed in the past and would have thrived. Number 8, Roberto Firmino, Arne Slot. We missed out on Roberto Firmino playing under Arne Slot by 1 year. And yes, while there's no guarantee that the player's fitness levels would have held up until then, it can't have escaped anyone's attention that our two options through the middle at the moment are a man who has the finishing ability of wet sand and a player who's so broken on a consistent basis his physical levels look like the character in the corner of a WWE game when he's took a steel chair shot to the head. So it's clear that reinforcements are needed in this area, and after watching how Jota and Nunez operate in Arne Slot's system, often being deployed as the deepest of the front three, sometimes even averaging a deeper position on the pitch than the likes of Szoboszlai and McAllister, it can't have escaped anyone's mind that Firmino would have been the perfect number 9 for Arne Slot, a proven false 9 master genius whose main strength was coming deep and linking play for the wide players like Mo Salah, who he worked alongside for over half a decade. Instead of Salah having to make things happen to accommodate for the mistakes of others, Firmino would have brought an even higher level out of Salah this season, and we wouldn't have to watch Nunez spoon things so high over the crossbar, the ball's orbiting the moon. He's also one of my favourite ever players, but we're not going to let that factor into it too much. Number 7, John Arne Riise, Jurgen Klopp. He's one of my favourite players ever, but don't let that factor into it too much. Look, I'm not going to pretend that Riise was a better player than Andrew Robertson or that he was even close, but god damn, I would sell my left kidney for a chance to go back in time and witness Riise's goal-scoring exploits for the first time all over again. When I make a list one day of my favourite ever players, you can bet he will be making an appearance. But in terms of perfect managers for him, I don't think think anyone can deny that Jurgen Klopp would have creamed his kecks at the chance to have Riese flying down the left-hand side of the pitch as an attacking option, a player who can hit a ball so hard it can break a player's leg, while also being capable of picking out a cross for attacking players. Yes, his defensive work was a bit lackluster, so to speak, at moments, but back when he signed, his defensive frailties were covered by the one and only Sami Hyypiä, who has been reincarnated today as Virgil van Dijk. We've seen time and time again how once Robertson and Trent venture forward, the likes of Van Dijk and Konate are there to sweep up on oncoming danger. So in that instance, there'd be no difference except that when Klopp's left back ventures forward now, there's every chance that he's going to ping one so fiercely it hits 88 and travels back in time like the DeLorean, killing a dinosaur in the process. Sorry, Crouchy. Number 6, Luis Diaz, Rafa Benitez. If the words of Jamie Carragher are to be believed, the main thing Liverpool's title-pushing 08-09 team missed was a solid left winger who could have helped the attack alongside the likes of Fernando Torres, Steven Gerrard and Dirk Kuyt. And while I can hear you in the comments saying, obviously Sadio Mane would be the ideal left winger to win Liverpool the league, case closed. And while I will admit you're right and respect your choice in life to live in your parents' house until you're in your 30s, it's too easy an answer. So instead, I'm going to go for Luis Diaz being the man to add some extra attacking threat down Liverpool's left side. Just imagine having Diaz running into the space behind alongside Torres, with Steven Gerrard pinging those pinpoint passes over the top for him to latch onto. It would have been a match made in heaven, like Arsenal in second place. Not only that, but during the 08-09 season, Torres actually missed 14 matches through injury, meaning that a lot of the goal-scoring reliance fell on the shoulders of Dirk Kuyt, with the only other real attacking options being David Ngog and Robbie Keane. So just imagine having the option of putting Diaz in the number 9 position and utilising his dribbling and speed to run at opposition defences in a similar way to Torres and give Liverpool an extra option for when the Spaniard was unavailable. Number 5, Pepe Reina, Roy Evans. David James is to football what your sex life is to your partner. It's something which goes on for far too long and is vastly uncomfortable for everyone involved. And despite the advice given to you on a consistent basis, you're still crap. I'm not referring to myself there at all. But spare a thought for David James, who possessed the movement of a dump truck in park, and he was one of the main reasons for Liverpool never truly making a major push for a league title in the mid to late 90s. Hell, Mark Wright said so himself, and who are we to argue with Mark Wright? So just imagine if Pepe Reina had been a part of Roy Evans' side during his run with the club, a goalkeeper who often goes underappreciated because of the side he was in at the time for Liverpool, but someone who could be relied upon to make top quality saves when it was required and when there wasn't an inflatable ball on the pitch. Not only that, but this was during the time when the main responsibility of goalkeepers was simply shot stopping and not trying to play like a central midfielder in between the sticks, something which Reina was never the best at, meaning he wouldn't find it any kind of struggle to fit right into Roy Evans' team, simply being needed to turn up, make a few high quality saves, home in time for tea and biscuits. Number 4, Danny Murphy, Jurgen Klopp. While Danny Murphy's a player that you could argue was at the right place at the right time during his tenure at Liverpool, winning the 2002-3 Supporters Player of the season, scoring 12 goals in the process, I find it hard to argue that under Jurgen Klopp, he could have been even better. With his versatile nature of being able to play through the middle or being put out wide, a trait similar to the likes of James Milner, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Gini Wijnaldum, not players of a particularly world-class quality, but important players in Klopp's Liverpool nonetheless. His punditry can be suspect at times, to say the least, especially on TalkSport, but as a player, Danny Murphy is described as a pit bull, and in the words of Phil Thompson, he was probably the most tactically aware player that Liverpool had at the time, during which they possessed the likes of Gerrard, Didi Hamann, Michael Owen, Jimmy Traore, you know, the best of the best. So just imagine him playing in the sort of Gini Wijnaldum role for Liverpool, drifting out wide to provide defensive support for Trent before winning the ball back and driving forward with it, like we saw him do time and time again during his stint at the Reds. He was solid in a tackle, had a winning mentality, and would have been a great leader to have in Liverpool's midfield alongside Jordan Henderson in the early days of Klopp's reign. Number 3, Adam Lallana, Rafa Benitez. It's hard to criticise Adam Lallana. The man was only at fault for the fact that he was born with shredded wheat for bone structure and was as stable physically as a Geordie after a night on the town, but that doesn't mean he was a bad player. In fact, I'd argue he was one of the first of Liverpool's 2015-16 squad to come to grips with Klopp's gegenpress system, with him scoring 8 goals the following season and becoming integral to the best press since the invention of the iron. But just imagine him playing for Rafa Benitez as the main attacking threat coming from Liverpool's midfield alongside Steven Gerrard, acting in that sort of Yossi Benayoun role and following up on all the attacks made by players like Torres and Kaut, almost like a fox in the box, ready to pounce on every loose ball. He wouldn't be worked as hard under Benitez if there being less reliance on pressing and more on technical ability on the ball, something which Lallana proved he has and was more than capable of being involved in, having picked up 21 assists during his stay at the club, and he is able to pick up a nice through ball for those players running in behind to latch onto. Number 2, Sami Hyypiä, Brendan Rodgers. It's probably the coldest it takes to say now, but it's clear to everyone involved, including us fans back then, that the main reason Liverpool's title push fell apart in the 2013-14 season was not because of the slip, something which the cretins of the internet who like to slide into their own mum's DMs and all like to say. It was because we had a backline consisting of John Flanagan, Glenn Johnson, Martin Skirtle and Mamadou Sakho, with the likes of Jose Enrique and Kolo Touré being the only real replacements should we lose any of them. So just imagine having the leadership of Sami Hyypiä in that backline to coordinate the, shall we say, sporadic back four and solidify things in matches where we needed to keep our composure and maintain some discipline. I mean, could you realistically imagine the 3-3 draw at Selhurst Park happening with Sami Hyypiä in that defence? Could you imagine the 2-0 loss to Chelsea at Anfield happening in the manner of which it did with Sami Hyypiä in that back line? Not only that, but Brendan Rodgers' side didn't rely too much in playing from the back, with the main aim being to get the ball to the attacking players as quick as they could because they were the players who would win us matches. So it's not something we have to be too nervous about, and seeing that from Sami Hyypiä. And he's a dream player who could have propelled Liverpool to success at a time when we were perhaps punching above our own weight which could have been handled better with a true leader in the back to carry it. And number 1, Emre Can, Roy Evans. Say what you want about Emre Can and his departure from Liverpool, but he was far from a poor player for the Reds, and honestly, the negative response from fans seemed to be more disappointment that we wouldn't get to see the German continue to develop under Klopp. He was a versatile player who we saw play at centre-back, central midfield, defensive midfield. He was everywhere at some point or another, particularly during Brendan Rodgers' sort of period of being Liverpool manager during the 2014-15 season when we was playing 3 at the back, a system that was originally utilised by Roy Evans following his appointment in 1994. So just imagine how happy Evans would have been to have had Emre Can been in that side, someone who could fill the back 3 fairly competently alongside the likes of Neil Ruddock and Phil Babb, while also being able to rotate with the midfielders when it was needed. So when people like McManaman and Redknapp needed a rest or were injured, Can could have stepped in with his box-to-box talent, meaning that John Barnes wasn't so isolated at points and being relied upon to be the sole creator from midfield. He could score a great goal too, like we saw against Chelsea and Watford, but he was also committed to a tackle, which would have been a massive benefit to Liverpool wherever he was racing back in midfield or stationed in the back line.